Welcome to the Holidays to Switzerland podcast. If you're planning a trip to Switzerland, this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Carolyn Schonefinger, the founder of HolidaysToSwitzerland.com. And in each episode, my expert guests and I share practical tips to help you plan your dream trip to Switzerland. You'll get helpful advice about travelling around Switzerland and hear about the most popular destinations, as well as some hidden gems. And we'll introduce you to plenty of wonderful experiences that you can enjoy as part of your Swiss vacation. Each episode is packed with expert tips, itinerary ideas, and inspiration to help make your Swiss vacation planning easy. So let's dive in. Grüezi, hi there. Welcome to episode 136 of the Holidays to Switzerland podcast. What are some of the must-do activities on your Switzerland itinerary? When you're visiting the cities, you're probably planning to wander around the old town, and there's probably some chocolate tasting amongst your activities too. If you're heading to Zurich, you can do both of those things, but in a unique, meaningful, and sustainable way. Today I'm chatting with two inspiring women who are changing the way travellers experience Switzerland's largest city. You'll hear how Jada Rocker brought her love of hiking to Zurich streets, designing city-based urban hikes that combine exercise, culture, and hidden gems, all without leaving the city limits. Meanwhile, Diana Fischer shares the story behind Detours Zurich, her innovative tour company that's putting social impact and sustainability at the heart of its tours. Diana shares how her walking tours connect visitors with locals, focus on important global topics like food waste and ethical fashion, and include hands-on workshops such as making your own bean-to-bar chocolate or upcycling with a Zurich designer. If you'd like to explore Zurich beyond the regular tourist trail and in a sustainable and meaningful way, you're going to love my conversation with Jada and Diana. Good morning, ladies. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast to share with our listeners all about your amazing tours that you both operate in Zurich. Let's start with Jada. Would you like to introduce yourself and give us a bit of a background about where you're from and what you do?
Good morning, Carolyn, and thank you for having me. I've been listening to your podcast forever, so I'm very honored to be here as a guest. My name is Jada. I'm originally from Rome, Italy. However, I lived mostly abroad as my father was a diplomat. I've had my share of moving countries, moving schools, changing jobs, learning new languages, and endlessly adapting to new cultures and circumstances. So I know a little bit about that. I moved to Switzerland 6 years ago, and professionally, I used to be a lawyer. So something very different from what I do now. I spent a great amount of time being a lawyer. Then my children were born. I became a mother. I took on a new role as a mother. This pushed me more and more into a different direction. I became a yoga teacher. I started guiding people, hosting, and eventually moving to Switzerland. I combined the yoga with the nature, and I started doing yoga and hiking retreats. And this is like a marriage made in heaven. There's no better nature, no more beautiful nature than in Switzerland, in my opinion. And I realized how much I enjoyed the hosting and the guiding part of it. So I eventually became a tour guide. And I just love to be a hostess and show people around, Switzerland. So that's been my path. Very colorful.
Yeah, fantastic. So definitely coming from the corporate side of things to a more nature-based profession. So yeah, what a fantastic transformation. Thank you for sharing that. Diana, how do I pronounce your name? Perhaps you could put me straight there and tell me a bit about your background.
Hi, Caroline, and thank you so much for having me on the podcast, and hello to all the listeners. So correct, my name is Diana, and I was born and raised in Slovakia, and my entire professional career actually has been in tourism, so that led me to travel and move around quite a bit. I studied and lived in England, then I moved to Austria, where I finished my master's in innovation and management in tourism. Then I moved to Czech Republic, to Prague, and finally 8 years ago, I settled here in Zurich, which I made my home. And 8 years ago, I arrived here, and in 2021, I started my own tour company called Detours Zurich. And what we do, we offer social impact walking tours that are back to the community. And it has been always a pleasure to be in the tourism sector, either in the academy or in the practice. And I am very excited to bring these experiences alive to visitors and locals alike.
Fantastic. So what actually inspired you to start Detours Zurich, and how did the idea for combining tourism and social impact come about?
Yeah, so I always had aspirations to start my own business, and I was always drawn to the experience. But a true catalyst for me was actually pandemic, because it became very obvious how interdependent the whole tourism industry is and how much the local communities were affected by the pandemic. And it became obvious to me, and I became convinced that we need to change the way we operate businesses in tourism, as we often have a tendency to focus on creating profit and raising the volumes of the guests. And I believe that we need to shift the focus more to creating value, or to add the value to the local communities through tourism. So I wanted to find an alternative to a, let's say, traditional model of sightseeing, and bring a product that would already in its design benefit the local communities and make a positive impact in the local communities. So that's how the whole idea of combining tourism and social impact came about. And the year 2021 was, of course, still the year when pandemic was still there. So it was definitely an interesting time to start a business in tourism during this time. But I think it also has proven that this model is different, and that it brings the value not only to visitors, but also to locals. So that was the whole concept, and how I started to think about this, and how I designed a product that would also be suitable as much as for travelers as for the locals here in Zurich.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. All right. Well, I look forward to hearing a bit more about the tours that you operate shortly. But what about you, Jada? Like, how did your idea for Zurich urban hikes come about, and what actually is an urban hike? Perhaps you'd like to tell us that as well.
Yeah, what is it? What inspired me was actually my love of hiking. So I said it before, I love this country. I love the natural beauty that it has to offer. And also, it's a small country, so it's actually feasible to walk around a lot. It's not these big cities where, it's a nightmare. Cities are small. Even Zurich is a large, small city at the end of the day. By international standards, it's quite a village. Only 400,000 people living there. So my love of hiking, my love of moving, my love of being outdoors, exploring, I tried to think of a way of combining all those cool aspects of hiking, the adventure, the planning aspect, the physical activity, getting that natural high, and feeling like you've been able to accomplish something really cool with your day. I tried to think of how could I compress all this into an experience that you could enjoy just outside your front with a short amount of time. The biggest variables whenever you think of hiking are the weather. In Switzerland, the weather is not just a variable for hiking, it's the main subject of conversation at any given day. So the weather can really alter your plans, and it's the biggest factor for when deciding to go hiking. So it can also be dangerous if the weather is not good, or you have to change your day, or you have to change your route, etc., etc. And then the second factor is the time. So, it's time consuming. You have to travel to whichever mountain destination area you want to go hiking, and then you have the actual hiking time. So weather and time really limit your options. So what inspired me was really to cut down the difficult factors, keep the cool ones, into an experience which could really be tailor-made in the city. So by removing the weather, removing the time, now we can hike in the city. We can hike whenever we want and for as long as we want, We're in the city, it's safe. You can always bail out. You can always find shelter if it starts raining or pouring. You're not in the middle of a mountain somewhere. And so it's a safe way, an approachable and manageable way of going hiking. So an urban hike, yeah? So that's what it is. I mean, it's exactly what it sounds for. It's a city adventure on foot.
Okay. I was going to ask you what makes your urban hikes unique. Well, I think you've kind of told us that there, but what parts of the city do the participants get to explore? Is it all the main, the famous or well-known sites, or do you take them off the beaten path a bit?
As I said, it's a small city, so we definitely, we love the old town. All our tours will definitely touch on the old town. I always think of Zurich as it's a city with a village at its heart. The village is the old town. It's like taking a step through time. You're walking through these little cobblestone streets. I love to tell people, just get lost in the old town. Just no map, no iPhone, nothing. It's safe. You can't get too lost. And even if you do, you'll find your way. So it's like these guild houses and the little, goldsmith that still makes, the gold by hand, or the bookbinder, all these local artisans. It really transports you to another time. So the old town is definitely something that is included in all our hikes. It's full of surprises, adventures. We touch on all the nice viewpoints, so we'll hike up to the Lindenhof and we'll see the Großmünster, but maybe not from the most obvious, photo point that is on all the Instagram feeds. We'll maybe find it from a little bit of a tucked away alley or a corner where it's like really framed in between two. And that's what makes it special. It's unexpected, it's offbeat, it's away from the main streets. And the most important thing is that you work for all your viewpoints. So you get there with your own legs, and it's that much sweeter.
Absolutely. You're getting your exercise while you're discovering all these amazing sites. Yeah. Diana, how do your tours differ from traditional city tours, and what can participants on your tours expect?
Yes, a very good question. So it's called a detour because it's not really about sightseeing as it is about the topics that we want to raise awareness about. And these topics are societal challenges that we believe need attention in today's world, and we really need to talk about them. For example, we touch on the topics of food waste or fast fashion or overconsumption. And we basically show to the participants the local solutions to these global challenges. So one big part is that our guests get to know the local change makers, as we like to call them. So they get to meet the members of the local community, they learn about their projects, and they have a chance to look behind the scenes. Another difference is that the tours are on average longer than it would be your, let's say, traditional walking tour. So we allow enough time. On average, each tour is about 3 hours. So that's to actually create these meaningful conversations and exchanges. And what is also different maybe to the other traditional sightseeing tours is that it's always active and interactive. So there is always either a workshop or an activity or an engagement with the local project, so that people really can get hands-on and get active and try out also put their hands on these topics and try it in practice. So this would be, I guess, the main differences.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So obviously sustainability and social impact are very important to you and are core parts of your tours. So how do you and Detours collaborate with the local community? What are some of the ways, or can you share some examples of how people on the tour can really get involved with those local communities?
Yes, so basically each tour is designed together with the local community, so together with our partners. So it's never going to be just us or our guides talking to you and guiding you, but you can see us more as a facilitator or connector between the guest and the community. And maybe I will bring an example of our ethical chocolate tour. So chocolate is, of course, a big topic in Switzerland. And for instance, on this tour product, we collaborate together with 3 partners. So first is a local NGO called Good Chocolate Hub, and they advocate for sustainable practices when it comes to cocoa production and chocolate consumption in Switzerland. they do the first part of the tour, which is a workshop where we educate our guests on the history of chocolate in Switzerland. How come that Switzerland is so famous for chocolate, where there are no cacao trees growing here? We talk about the ethics, we talk about the value chain. And then the second partner that is involved in this tour is bar manufacturing. So then after we cover the theory, the guest can see in practice how the sustainability can be brought in practice and actually how the chocolate makers themselves take their view on this. And the tour participants can observe each step of production. And the third partner would be a fair trade store that gives us a space to hold this workshop. So basically, it's never just us, but we always connect different parts. And when we talk about social impact or giving back to the community and the collaboration with the partners, so with each tour, we share the profit also with the partners. And so there is, we can say, a direct impact or direct contribution would be the financial part, so that you can also see on our website, as we came up with so-called impact wheels, where you as a tour participant can have a look at where your money goes exactly. So who we support and how the money, let's say, is distributed from your tour ticket. But I think for me, even it's more important the giving back part, that with each tour we aim to inspire change. And for example, with this ethical chocolate tour, it's a great example, because we often have guests after the tour coming to us and really changing their perspective and the consumer behavior when it comes to chocolate, after they learn how much work is behind, what the value chain looks like, when they learn about the cocoa farmers, when they learn about the whole journey, how from the raw beans becomes the chocolate bar. So we often have people, looking for the more sustainable options after they join our tours. So I think that's the wonderful way to bring all these topics together, but to also inspire change and to support those small local chocolate makers, for example, support the work of this local NGO. And basically, each tour has the similar concept depending on the topic that we focus on. In this case, as I mentioned, I brought example of the ethical chocolate.
Yeah, wonderful. So it sounds like both of you, obviously, like you really support those local artisans. In your instance, like the ethical chocolate makers that you've just mentioned, and Giada is taking her guests to, goldsmiths and bookbinders that are obviously very, very local. So that's fantastic. Giada, are there other ways that your urban hikes incorporate sustainable practices?
Oh, absolutely. And I love everything Diana is. And my urban hikes are just by definition sustainable. We use the power of our legs. So they're 100% car free and 100% powered by human energy, let's say. Also, for example, that's something very important, sustainability. So we always encourage guests to bring their own water bottles, and we introduce them to the fantastic world of public drinking water fountains in Zurich, which I'm from Rome, and we have a lot of water in Rome, but not as many as in Zurich. So there's one around every corner. People start to count them, and then they get obsessed, and they're like, I'm going to go and find some more on my time. So people really enjoy drinking, this pure alpine water, which is incredibly fresh and free. By the way, anything's for free in Zurich. So it's a really nice way to be sustainable. So bring your water bottle, or maybe buy one while you're in Zurich, and, learn about ditching the plastic bottles. Another thing, for example, that we pass by some sustainable shops, like, for example, you might have heard of this one, the S Bar in the Old Town in Zurich. And we might pass by there, and it's a shop that sells like second day food, like second day bread, or it's called yesterday's fresh stuff today. So you're eating fresh things from yesterday, which are still delicious, but maybe at half price instead of throwing things away. So it's about conserving food and avoiding food waste. And we might just pass through there and it's a local shop. And if people want to grab a, pastry for a reasonable price, or come back later. And so we're on the way and definitely focus on that aspect of sustainability. But one more thing, which I think is really important, it's really the mindset. Because when you walk, essentially, you're slowing down. It's all part of like this slow travel experience. So you're not zipping around in a car or in a bus, you're actually taking your time. And as you walk and slow down, you start to connect more with your surroundings. So you notice things. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, what about that? And oh, I'm going to come back here later and look at, oh, can we pop into this shop? And so you start to have a connection with the place. It's not so impersonal anymore. And it's about slowing down and maybe seeing less, but seeing it better, and actually bringing your interest to learning about the local shops or the local culture. And so I think it's, walking is at the base of all this sustainable practices. I mean, if you can walk, for me, it's a lifestyle. And it's really about making these small choices every day. So when people come on a hiking tour and they realize I can do this in my own city, not just because I'm here in Zurich on vacation, but I can actually walk at home. I can walk to the groceries. I can walk to the post office. I can incorporate little walks everywhere, and ditch my car and make my life just a little bit more sustainable and get a bit of a workout in there, a little bit of a step count in there. That's a win for sustainability, so more walking, less plastic, and little choices every day that, make a bigger impact.
I'm sure there's some hidden secrets in all our cities that we're not aware of. If we just set off and with the aim to find something new, I'm sure we would.
Exactly. Stay curious.
Yeah, exactly. So tell us a bit more about the different tours that you offer, and do people need to be, regular walkers, or is it okay for someone who's perhaps, doesn't walk too often for leisure? What do we need to know about the tours that you offer?
You need to, I mean, we have 3 different tours, okay? So they're mainly based on length, okay, and duration. So I always say you don't need to be an athlete, you don't need to be a runner or anything like this, but you do have to have a style. So you have to be used to having, to walking a little bit every day. Okay, of course, you're on vacation, so people tend to get a little bit outside of their comfort zone when they're on vacation because you don't have the stress, you don't have the time constraints, and maybe you're willing to go a bit outside of your comfort zone. It is not a mountain hiking trail, so there's no mountain risks or anything like that associated with walking. We're just walking in the streets, but we're taking as many stairs as we can find. So if you're a regular gym exerciser, if you walk around a bit, we have a short tour, which I like to call it the quickie. Exactly what it sounds like. It's a quickie. So it's just 1.5 hours and 4.5 kilometers. So that's just under 3 miles. Okay. And it's the shortest one. It's all in the city, in the old town, I mean. And if you're short on time and you just want to get a quick overview of the city, that's your go-to, the quickie. Then we have the classic, which is my favorite one. It gives you a bigger bird's eye view of the city. It's not just the old town, it's also the whole university quarter, which is fascinating. I mean, this is where Albert Einstein used to walk around in the early 1900s. So just that by itself. And there's some of the most beautiful views of the city. So I love this area. And it's a steep climb to get there. We get those steps in. This one's about 3 to 3.5 hours, depending also on the pace of the group, and about 9 kilometers, so just under 6 miles. And then we have one which is the longest one. It's called the Distance. This one actually is a 4.5 to 5 hours affair. So definitely here I would recommend, for those more fitness enthusiasts, it's also at a faster pace. So once we get out of the town, so we'll do the town, the city, and then we'll get out of town and go along the lake. So this part will be more faster paced and really just about seeing the scenery and getting that sort of different layer of the lake and the mountains and the trees. This is a full half-day hiking adventure. And if you walk and if you exercise regularly, any one of these tours is fine for you. And you will be happy. You will be sore afterwards in that like really nice, yummy way where your body is tired, your eyes are full of impressions, and your heart is full of a wonderful day out. That's the idea, just like in any mountain hike.
Excellent. So do you offer the tours all year round, or is it only over sort of the summer months?
They're offered all year round, of course. We're in the city. So again, as I said, you can always bail out. I mean, if it's raining too hard or if the snow or anything is happening, I can just take a tram and go back to my hotel. You're not stranded somewhere in a mountain. There's always shelter. We can always take shelter in a coffee shop and support some local businesses. So that's always an option. So the tours are offered year round. Of course, they are adapted. And if I get a booking and it's really bad weather, I'm open to adapting the tour, adapting the route, or rescheduling for another day. But doing the tours in the city really allows us to do them all year round.
Okay, excellent. All right, so Diana, let's hear about all the different offerings that Detours Zurich have. So you've already mentioned that ethical chocolate tour. What else do you have available?
Ethical chocolate is definitely one of the best sellers because, of course, with the chocolate, so people get to taste a lot of chocolate. And as I already mentioned, it has includes a workshop and a visit to a bean-to-bar chocolate manufactory. It's about 3 hours long, and we go around by public transportation. The next tour is called Circular City. So this is themed around circular economy. So this is for anyone who is interested in circular design. Visit different small label ateliers, ethical brands, secondhand markets or material markets or community spaces. And basically our guests get to know the people behind all these projects. And the highlight of the tour is always an upcycling workshop that we do at the small design atelier together with a local artist, where the tour participants learn how to turn discarded materials into new items. So we again bring the theory into practice, and the guests can then also create their own little takeaway home souvenir from the tour. Then we have, I guess, my favorite tour, which is called Conscious Foodies, because I'm a big foodie and I love food. And this is really an unconventional food experience, or how I like to call it, a rebellion against the traditional food tours. Because we basically shift from a passive, let's say, city dwellers to active urban foragers. This tour is themed around urban foraging. So you basically learn what grows around you here in Zurich in an urban landscape. So we collect herbs, wild plants, and roots. We learn about nature's magic, and then we also cook with what we find, which could be a cooking session either outdoor or indoor, depending on the weather. So it's really a wonderful tour that connects the community through food and nature. And because our experiences are usually booked by locals and visitors alike, it is always a nice mix of people. So people always enjoy as well to meeting each other and making new friends. And I think food connects people in the best way. Finally, we have our bean-to-bar chocolate course. So this is a more hands-on experience that, of course, again, revolves all around chocolate. But on this tour, we go a bit further away from Zurich. So we take local scenic train ride through a beautiful Swiss countryside, about 45 minutes drive. And then we arrive to a small local bean-to-bar manufacturer where we are welcomed by the founders. And the guests, again, learn about the history of chocolate. They observe each step of production. And the best part, of course, is that they get to make their own chocolate. So everyone makes 6 bars of chocolate. We also do a little chocolate quiz. And people get to try not only chocolate, but also different parts of cocoa fruit. So we also offer cocoa juice. We also make a cocoa tea. So the guests really get to know more about what you can do with the cacao beans apart from chocolate. So these are our offerings right now, and we mostly offer our tours. So our tour season starts in March until December. The only exception is the conscious foodies tours when we forage, because the foraging usually is the best to do from April, September. And of course, it's very seasonal because it's different plants and different herbs grow in different times. So that's the only one that is more, let's say, limited with the seasonality. But the rest of the tours we do all year around.
Ah, excellent. And what sort of group size is typical for your tours? Do you have a maximum number that you can take?
Yes. So in order to keep the experiences as intimate as possible, we usually don't take more than 15 guests. So 15 guests will be our group size, which allows also good space and for exchanges also between people, because I think if you have a large groups, then this little bit disappears and the guests together don't have the same experience. So maximum 15 guests would be on our tours. Yeah.
Okay, sure. And do you yourself get involved with guiding on any of the tours?
Yes, so you can definitely meet me, especially on the chocolate, on the chocolate tours. We love chocolate, but we are also a very small team. So we are 7 of us together. So there is a high chance that you see me on one of the tours. But as I mentioned, we are, for instance, on the foraging walk expert. We have a local forager that guide the experience, but we are always present, someone from the Detours team. So yes, you can. If you, Caroline, come one day to Zurich and book a detour, then it's a really high chance that you will see me.
Wonderful. Well, that would be excellent. What sort of feedback have you received from travellers? I mean, I'm sure you mentioned earlier that you've noticed that some of your clients, they start to look at their chocolate purchases and their chocolate habits a bit different after they've done that ethical chocolate tour. Have you received other feedback from clients who've done some of your tours that you've thought, wow, this makes it all worthwhile. This is what I wanted to happen when I first thought of starting Detours Zurich?
I think that for me, the most exciting part is definitely to see the change, or to see that we do inspire change. So for example, like you already mentioned in the consumer behavior, I think the people appreciate, or we always get the good feedback or positive feedback regarding the fact that they can really engage with local community. So for example, when we take our circular city tour, people then are inspired to actually incorporate the concept of circularity into their everyday lives, because they get to know the places where they can go to repair, where they can, go to shop secondhand. So there is a bigger understanding of what has Zurich to offer in these specific topics. And people always appreciate the hands-on aspects of the tours. So there is always an activity. So it's never passive. You are never only a listener and we just explain to you all about circular economy, but it's really hands-on. You get to know the members of the local community, and people also like this unique, exclusive behind-the-scenes look. Because, for instance, also when we go to a chocolate manufacturer, it's not that you are there with another 40 travelers, but it's really just you and your group. And there is a clear time and space dedicated for you to learn and to exchange and to get to know the local people. And then what I always love to see, and then I say like, okay, it works, it makes sense, that the people still follow up. We often have people after 2-3 weeks sending us once a very, very cute family from Canada. They started to make their own chocolate at home. They just simply bought cocoa beans because they learned like, okay, we can do the first steps at home. We can roast the beans at home. We can grind the beans at home. And they started to make their own chocolate. So what drives me forward is really that we can see that we can inspire that positive change, and that we can help those projects in the local community by bringing people there, by making our guests, our locals, aware of all these local initiatives, and thereby we can support all the in Zurich. So it's a wonderful way to bring all this together in the tourism field.
Yeah, definitely. And it must make your heart swell when you know that you've been able to sort of push them along in the way that they've changed and started thinking about things differently, which is fantastic. Jada, I'm sure that on your tours, well, I didn't actually ask you the maximum number of people that you can take on your tours, but I guess because of the style of tour that you're doing, you actually get a real connection with some of your guests. What are some of the memorable experiences or some of the most heartening feedback that you've had from some of your guests?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we as far as group size, we also have a maximum of 10, really, because more than that, it's, again, the experience becomes a bit difficult. So we want to keep the group as smaller as possible. Also zipping around, as far as the pace of the group, we need to be a little bit on the same pace and try to adjust. Whenever you're a group, you have to adjust to your slowest members. So we don't want to have huge groups. So we keep it tight. And then as far as experiences, I mean, similar to what Diana just said, I mean, it makes me smile when I get pictures from my guests who show me, like, they send me videos of the stairs that they just, ran up, or tell me like, I didn't take the elevator, and they send you a little picture, and it's like, yay, it makes you smile. It means that, the seed was planted and something that they took home with them. And it's a little choice. Again, it's like a small choice out, whether you recycle. And something that is also very visible here in Switzerland is how much people are invested in the whole community. So we recycle everything. And you see this even on the tour, like, oh, now I can throw this, and I don't just throw it in a bin. I throw it I have to choose, is it the bin for metal, for plastic, for paper, for this and that, so there's a whole choice that you have to make right there. And that's the reason why, because it gets recycled. And so you learn a little bit about this culture, and maybe when you go home, you make that extra effort to recycle it in a conscious way, so it actually makes it into the circle. Highlights of every tour have to be the picnics. When we reach our highest point, I shouldn't say this because it's a bit of a surprise, but I always whip out, like on any good hike, I whip out some cheese and some bread. They're all local cheeses from the local Zurich region. So we have, the Zurich Grand Cru, or made here from the Oberland around Zurich, and some local Zott, maybe, local bread from the region. And it's always a surprise because it's always after our highest point, maybe 2/3 into the tour. We all have a little picnic. We share some food. As Diana said, nothing brings people together as food. And so it's a way also of showcasing a little bit, what is the famous cheese and the chocolate and the bread of Switzerland, and having this community moment as well to just exchange, interactions. Also remember that we're hiking, so we're not stopping. The tour is not a history tour, so there's no, long explanations about anything. It's really the commentary is just sprinkled in along the way. It's more about fun facts or trivia about Zurich. So there is also this nice moment where we stop and we all sort of exchange our impressions about what's going on and how we're doing. And yeah, and it's always a nice highlight moment also to hear from everybody else.
Yeah, great. And as you both said, food does bring people together, and it also makes you sort of stop and slow down and think about what you're doing. And that's the whole idea behind both your tour companies. So, Giada, before we finish, what tips would you give to travellers who want to experience Zurich beyond the typical tourist trail? Obviously, they need to do one of your tours.
Obviously.
But what other tips do you have for people?
Yeah, I mean, after you've come on an urban hike and you have more time in Zurich, or it's your second time, just remember, walk, don't rush. Okay, the magic is in the small streets. It's not on the main streets. Yeah, take your time, explore, pop into the local stores, have a look, don't be shy. Get a little lost, like I said before, ditch the map for a second and just use your, intuition. Shall I turn left or right? And see where that takes you. Remember that Zurich is safe. Okay, it's very safe. You see little kids walking to school, 4 or 5-year-old kids. So they are safe. You're safe too. So nothing's going to happen to you. Live a little bit on the wild side, maybe ride on a Zurich tram. This is like the old world feeling of riding around in the city with these above ground trains. They're called trams, and they're basically part of the city's identity. So you can get on a tram, and it's also, you can just sit there and you can see what kind of people get on and off. And you get a little glimpse into local life. You'll see, mothers, you'll see people going to work, you'll see whole school classrooms full of little kids, who are going on a field trip. Everybody rides the public transportation system. In fact, many people don't even own a car, so they walk or they ride the trams, which are all, by the way, powered by sustainable hydroelectric power. So that's already also in the mix there. And then just, have maybe, skip the bigger cafeterias and so on or restaurants, and maybe just, especially now that the weather is getting nicer, so you have spring and summer, a lot of Zurich locals like to just grab something for lunch and eat outside. So maybe grab a bratwurst, the typical sausage, or grab yourself a coffee and the Gipfeli, which is our version of croissant, and go and eat outside. Go and hang out at the lake. Go to, a bench. Put your feet in the water. Do what the locals do and slow down and just really enjoy the city like a local. Those are my tips.
Excellent tips there. Thank you. Diana, over-tourism is a term that we're hearing more and more lately, and it applies to countries all around the world. So for anyone listening who is planning their trip to Switzerland, what tips can you give them, or what should they think about when they're planning their trip so that they can limit their negative impact but not miss out on still having a fantastic experience?
So I have one simple tip for your listeners, and this is to go slow and small. So slow, meaning that if you can stay in a destination longer, don't just visit the place to, let's say, take it off your bucket list, but really try to immerse yourself in the community, meet the local people, talk to local people, maybe even attend local events or sport events, and try to stay in the places that are maybe a small village next to the city that you originally wanted to go, because that gives you also this slow way to travel. And I believe, same as Jada said, that use also the advantage of excellent public transportation here in Switzerland, and take your time. Take your time to immerse yourself in a place which you chose to visit. And travel small, which means support small local businesses. So, for example, you are looking for your hotel, don't book a resort or a hotel chain, but try to research and find, for example, a small family-owned hotel, or maybe even consider homestays. And think, like how I like to think about it when I travel, think about where your money goes. So once you book an experience, does it stay in the local community, or does it go to someone that you can't really find out who is at the end of this chain? And if you can, book directly, because I think this is something that perhaps travelers are not so aware about when you book through Viator, or when you book through Get Your Guide. These are, of course, great platforms for you to see all the experiences that the city has to offer. However, the suppliers that are on the other side are often get charged quite high commissions, so they don't get the earnings as they would get if you would book directly through their website. So it is a little bit unfortunate. There is always, I feel, kind of quite a pressure on the consumer, on us, so on travelers, to really invest more time in your travel research, and also ask the travel companies, ask your hotels what they do when it comes to sustainability, when it comes to supporting of the local community. Because I think you can already get let's say, a good bite when you visit the website, and you can see how transparent the information they provide, because of course there is a lot of greenwashing going on as well. So it is a little bit, I feel, up to us to spend a little bit more time on the research before we travel, and then while we are at the destination and during our time, we should really focus on those small local businesses that should benefit from the tourism. And slow and small, that would be my advice.
Yeah, well, that's excellent advice. And I think too, if we think about that in 10 years, in 20 years, do we want those small family-run hotels still to be operating? Do we want the small tour operators like yourselves still to be able to operate? Booking direct is the best way to go about that, because, as you said, booking through those big platforms, the person that's providing the tour or providing the accommodation gets so much of the cost taken out, they don't get it. So, it's not sustainable for them. It's not a sustainable way to operate. Well, thank you so much. I will include links to both your websites in the show notes for this episode. But Diana, perhaps first, if you'd like to tell us where people can find you.
Yes, so I would love to invite all of your listeners to check our website, so Detours Zurich .ch, so .ch. And if you like to follow us on our social media, we are on Instagram, we are on Facebook, and I'm also happy to get in touch via LinkedIn. So yeah, all the, let's say, traditional channels. And yes, I would like to also say thank you, Caroline, for having us. And I would like to also extend the greetings to all of your listeners. And yeah, it would be lovely to keep in touch. And also it was lovely to hear more from Jada and her urban hikes. And thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure. Jada, where can people get information about your Zurich urban hikes?
Yes, certainly on the website, zurichurbanhikes.com. Also Instagram, zurich.urban.hikes. LinkedIn, just like Diana said, all the traditional outlets. I'm happy you go on the website, you can send an inquiry directly, you have WhatsApp, you can contact me directly. It's mainly me during the hikes. I have some colleagues sometimes, but it's mainly me. So the chances are you will go hiking. It'll be my pleasure to show you around. Just bring your good tread shoes, please. No flip-flops. Yeah. And of course, I want to say again, thank you for inviting me on the show. I'm really happy. As I said, I've been a listener from a long time. To have been here today with Diana, which I think we have very complementary type of approach to slow travel. And yeah, I love it. Thank you very much, Caroline, for hosting us. And thank you to all the listeners. We do hope to see you in Zurich, either hiking or going on a sustainable chocolate tour. Just contact us.
Well, yeah, it's been great chatting to you both, and I'm so happy that I was able to connect you too. And yeah, before we started recording, you realised that you both kind of live in the same neighbourhood. So, yeah, so that's wonderful. And I really hope that we've made everyone listening a bit more curious about your tours and how they can have a better impact when they travel, and especially when they're visiting Zurich. So, thank you again, ladies.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wow, what an inspiring and thought-provoking conversation that was. If you're looking to experience Zurich beyond the usual tourist trail, I hope today's episode has inspired you to slow down, explore on foot, and even connect with the local community. Will you discover hidden gems on an urban hike with Jada? Or perhaps make a positive impact by participating in one of the Detours Zurich tours. Maybe you'll do both. They are both fantastic options for anyone who wants a more meaningful, sustainable, and memorable activity in Zurich. You can learn more about today's guests and get links to both the Zurich Urban Hikes and Detours Zurich websites in the show notes for this episode. I'll also include a link to my free guide, 21 Useful Things to Know Before You Visit Switzerland, in the show notes too. Those show notes are available at holidaystoswitzerland.com/podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please share it with your family, friends, and colleagues who are planning their own trip to Switzerland. And if you have a moment, I'd be super grateful if you could leave a 5-star rating or a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you so much again for tuning in. Until next time, cheers!
Take a right or take a left, end up in the perfect place. Ain't no wrong way when you got time. Whoa, the streets are mine. Drive alone or take some friends.